This is going to be a rather short Tom London show. In fact, I wouldn't even call this a Tom London show because Tanya and Alistair aren't joining me. I just thought I would do this quite quickly and impromptu. So this is a rather stripped down couple of minutes with you, but I didn't want to say that I would catch up with you and then not do it. So here I am catching up with you. And I'll wait for comments to come in the comment section on YouTube and Facebook Live as you join me. And I'll react to the comments as we go along. But I did tell you that I would just report back on the day I've had today. I've just finished a phone call with Tanya, where I think I must have sworn about 100 times, holding my head in my hands, because I've just come back from a studio discussion of We the Nation at ENCA that will broadcast on Sunday night on ENCA on the healthcare system and the refusal of foreigners to access healthcare in South Africa. This morning I had an altogether pleasant experience at Sanlam when I went to speak at their Meersig building on the power of the smartphone, and that was very enjoyable, and I think I did okay there. And then after that, I got in the car and I drove off to ENCA and I joined, I'm guessing, 60 other people, mostly South Africans, some foreigners, and some foreigners representing foreigner organizations, but mostly South Africans, and mostly people from Operation Dudula, March and March, the Patriotic Alliance and Action SA, who have a common ideology, and that is that the foreigners in South Africa are responsible for a lot of our problems, and specifically in the healthcare sector. I don't want to spend this time dissecting what I see as the problem, but just on a surface level, let me say that it's my personal belief, and not anecdotal, but rather based on the Ombuds reports on the state of dysfunction in our various hospitals, including Helen Joseph, where I instigated that report, that I believe our problems in our healthcare system emanate and start at the source, that the problems in our healthcare system in South Africa can largely be attributed to mismanagement of our healthcare institutions and mismanagement of the funds. That's a polite way of saying it. If you go, or at least a year ago, because some things might have changed at Helen Joseph since last year, and I think some have, but if you went into Helen Joseph a year ago like I did, you would have seen that there was no linen for the beds. You would have seen that the food is substandard. You would have realized that we're working with archaic, 100-year-old paper-based systems, that doctors come to work for an hour or two and then go off to their second job, but get paid for a full day's work instead. That the nursing staff are so demotivated that they can barely drag themselves to work in the morning. And many of the staff point to the failing infrastructure and crumbling management in our hospitals as the reason that they are demotivated. But today I sat in a discussion, and it will be on ENCA on Sunday night, I think 8:30, somewhere around there, where the bulk of South Africa's healthcare problems are being placed at the feet of foreign nationals, illegal immigrants, undocumented foreigners, whatever you want to call these people. And I got a taste of the anger that exists at street level. It was unfortunate that none of our top leaders in South Africa were there for the discussion. None of our health department officials were there for the discussion. And I found it quite unfortunate that we take such a complex problem, and the problem, I believe, starts with us, South Africans, and lay the blame squarely on other people. That's my opinion. I've got to tell you that my opinion was in the minority. There were a lot of people shouting Abahambe, A lot of people shouting at the foreigners in the audience to go home. A number of insults that really had no part in the discussion. And I came back and thought to myself, we've watched this in Europe. We've seen it in America. And I think in the next elections in South Africa, we're going to see what we've seen in Western countries and their elections, where the number one issue is going to be immigration. I don't know how to solve that problem. But I do think that as South Africans, when we see broken institutions like our healthcare system, we should first look at ourselves and the problems we've created. Anyway, that was my story. I came out of that discussion absolutely exhausted and very worried about the levels of frustration, anger / hatred that I saw, and very worried that whenever we talk about these complex problems in South Africa, we blame someone and we never blame the politicians. I mean, what is it that we can have a problem that is quite clearly created by our leadership and our government, and then we blame someone else for it? But the moment you say that, in fact, in the green room before, when I raised that, somebody from the opposition side said to me, oh, well, not everybody has private medical aids and drinks smoothies. I think the gentleman was referring to me. Now, I've never had a smoothie in my life, and I sit at the lower economic side of things in South Africa, so I certainly don't run around with all the privileges in the world. I struggle like many other South Africans. But yeah, the moment you say, could it be more complex than that? The conversation ends. So that was my afternoon, and then one part of me regrets going, and then the other part of me is happy that I got to see this, because I don't know, I made a video a little while ago saying I'm not sure whether our politicians are reading the room right and our leaders in government are reading the room. I'm more convinced now than ever before that our political leadership in government is not reading the room properly. There is anger at street level in South Africa that I haven't seen since 1988. And I don't know where it will lead. So I'm rather depressed tonight. I'll be totally honest with you. Tonight's the first night ever in my 52 years, first night ever in 52 years that I drove home thinking, I don't know whether I want to be part of this. You know, there's no other country that I long for except South Africa. But boy, do I want to be part of this anger. My conscience doesn't allow me to. And at one point in the debate, I asked the studio audience if we could leave the children out of this, so that at least a child who needs care at a hospital doesn't face these problems, and I was shouted down. So that's where we are. We're a country now, it seems, that largely wants to see all foreigners leave our country, and if a child needs medical care, it doesn't matter that it's a child, they must not receive it. So unfortunately, that's what I have to report back on. And it just seems that politics in South Africa has become so simplistic that we miss the point. Cheryl Berger's on board, says, good evening, Tom. Una Guida said, I thought I would miss it, but now I've been waiting to grab my bag of Doritos for an hour. I don't know whether I'll be on for an hour. I honestly don't know whether I've got the energy. But if you want to ask me a question about today or put your point across, I mean, I don't have a problem with opposing points of view, so if you disagree, that's fine. The one thing I'm proud of on our show and our engagement we have when we have these shows is that we're able to do it without hating each other, whatever our differences of opinion are. And I'm quite proud of that, because I think we can move forward faster and better if we can agree on some things. Dawn Stelfox says, hi there, Tom. Rosie Brown says, good evening, Tom. Annette Jacobs is on board. Evening, all. Wendy Kutsia says, evening, Tom. Margaret Guider says, good evening, all. Hilda Harmsa's on board. So is Nico Dieterich. What are you talking about? I'm just talking about my day. I did one presentation this morning, and then I participated in a studio audience discussion on healthcare and access being denied to foreigners in South Africa was the theme of the discussion. Beverly Ann Lloyd joins us from the UK. Una Guida says healthcare should be a human right no matter who you are. No human being should be denied healthcare, not according to most of the studio audience today. That argument, Una, would not have gone very far at all. Margaret Guider says, how terrible is the anger towards the foreigners? It's become a major problem. The countries that the foreigners come from were good enough to look after the anti-apartheid activists in the day. Well, that's a complicated argument. And I've seen that argument used before, but when you talk to South Africans who were in exile, they will tell you that they weren't allowed to participate in the economies of those countries. They had to stay inside the camps where they received training, and there were no benefits and extras for them. So from the outside, it looks like we owe these countries something because they assisted the armed struggle. But many participants in the armed struggle will say we didn't get access to anything but those camps and the training, and we weren't allowed to participate like foreigners are allowed to participate in South Africa. So that doesn't count. And so that argument would have gone nowhere as well today. Mick Dedrick says, good evening, Tom. Big hug, says Annette. Yeah, thank you. I mean, today of all days, I need a hug. Karen Atwell says, Tom, thank you for representing so many people who have no voice. I'm so sorry you're feeling this sad. I feel sad that, and I understand immigration is a huge issue. And in a perfect world, we wouldn't have illegal immigrants in South Africa. But A, this isn't a perfect world. And B, the human being in me, I personally would not be able to take someone to a country that is war-torn or a country that has no economy to speak of and leave them there and say, sort yourselves out. I would find that hard to do. I would find it impossible to stand at the steps of a hospital and deny a 6-year-old child, for example, healthcare when they need it badly. And that's just me. And I can't make any apologies for that, and I can't change my mind on that. Cheryl Berger says, sending hugs and love to you, Tom. Thank you for doing what you do. I honestly, at one point, thought of pulling out of this discussion today because I knew whatever I said would be unpopular. And so I treaded, is that a word? I treaded carefully today. And I watched my words very closely to try and get a point across. And the point is that when we see broken hospitals, the first people we should blame is ourselves, South Africans, for allowing this to happen. Even on the immigration issue, we should blame ourselves for allowing this to happen. And now it's happened. Dawn Stelfox says, stand your ground, Tom. Mandela and the likes of him are rewarded for it. Do not back down. You're stronger than you think. Nelson Mandela is, you mentioned the word Mandela today, and you can very quickly be shot down and have people tell you he was a sellout. However, I happen to agree with you. If there was something about Mandela that I had a lot of time and respect for, was his attitude towards children. And I think when we lose that as a country, when we lose our humanity to such an extent that we will deny a child health care, then it makes me long for someone like Mandela to stand up and say what we're doing is not right. Nikki Hart, I'm so sorry, Tom. It's unfortunate reality. And it is, and I'm telling you now, I came out of there and I went, this next election in this country is going to be fought. It's going to be lost and won on this issue. This issue is powerful enough to lose or win an election. That's how powerful this issue is. Gary McLean says, I've also noticed this anger, Tom. Concur with you entirely. Glad you visit so many people in hospital besides all the politics. I hate politics. I spent a lot of time around politicians, and when I was in media interviewing people, and I've even worked with politicians. I feel let down as a South African by our politicians. And when I say politicians, I don't just mean the ruling party. All politicians. Because our politicians live in bubbles with free houses for parliamentarians down in Cape Town and air tickets and nice salaries and medical aids, subsidized food. Our politicians are not being exposed to what you're seeing. Who was it that said that? Gary. Gary, I think you and I are seeing more than our politicians now who live in bubbles. You must have an early night, sir, Cheryl. I'm going to. Bridget. Hey, Bridget. How's it, Bridget? Good to have you on board. Sarah Mark says, hi, Tom and everyone listening. Patsy McKeegan says, Tom, the hospital problem existed long before the big influx of foreigners, never any accountability. And that's what I try to express in this discussion today. I took the Health Ombuds report on Helen Joseph Hospital with me, and I quoted from it. No permanent CEO for 6 years. Body pans in mortuaries sold for scrap metal. No functioning HR department, so no accountability in the hospital. Everybody fighting with each other, nobody working with each other. Johannesburg laundry doesn't always work, so the linen is not always there, and we don't count the sheets. So there's no inventory. And the list goes on and on and on. And that quite clearly is a fault of our own. That's a South African fault. It's called mismanagement and it's called stealing. And that, in my opinion, is the cause. And what we're arguing about is the symptom. Alistair Jameson, the staff at the hospital have said to me, just wait, as soon as we get those that don't belong here, whomever they may be, this will soon be a thing of the past. They seem to be preparing for this denial of healthcare to foreigners. Absolutely. It's getting stronger and stronger and stronger, and the promise by my fellow countrymen who are saying the solution to the problem is to deny foreigners healthcare, the argument on that side is that we should start there. My argument is that we should start in the hospitals. My argument is, and I wish someone would do a study on the efficiency ratio or percentage in our hospitals, because I don't think our hospitals are operating at 50% efficiency. And if we doubled the efficiency, there might just be room for everybody, and this argument would be a non-argument. I did say, I think I said it, that if we kick every foreigner out of South Africa, Helen Joseph will still have no permanent CEO. So unless we fix that, our hospitals won't improve. Yeah, maybe the queues will get a bit shorter at the clinics or on the way in, but you'll still lie in a bed for 2 weeks waiting for someone to get their act together so you can have a CAT scan. Margaret Guider says, we don't have the political leadership anymore to guide us. I think it's a global problem. I really do. Our leaders run with populist slogans and sentiment, and I don't see any leaders standing up saying, you're wrong. You know, it's almost a civil war waiting to happen. I'm tired of the race card being played in reverse. It's just so much going on. Carlos de Gavea, hi Carlos, says, I'm sorry, Tom. Yeah, I really didn't feel good coming out of that. Carol Hall says, hi Tom, I do agree with you. Unagaida says, unfortunately, some powerful world leaders are also setting an example that people should not get aid for healthcare as they're seen as substandard human beings. This is a worldwide problem. Yeah, I think it's a flu that started in Europe and has been building momentum for 10 years or so. We saw it dominate the US elections, and I think we're going to catch it too. So if you want a glimpse into the future of politics in South Africa, look at what's happened in Europe and look at what's happened in America. Annette Jacob says, Tom, can I come and give you a waffle, ice cream, and Coke? Yeah, jeez, yeah. Hilda Hudhamsa says, it's really bad these days. There's so many dodgy things going on in South Africa. Marilyn Wason says, shame, Tom, you look tired and very down. Have a hot bath. That's exactly my plan, an early night sleep. Jenny Kennedy's on board. Hi, Tom, sending big hugs. Soraya Lara says, sorry, Tom, you look so tired. This thing exhausted me. Antonia da Costa Moreira says, do the nurses also not help white patients? No, I mean, I was one of two. I very rarely bring race into these discussions, but I will say that I was one of, I think, two white people in the studio audience. This is ironic because we've lived with 3 decades of pointing fingers at each other as South Africans, but for the first time I watched South Africans pointing fingers at foreigners and not at other South Africans. So ironically, white South Africans, and I think what white South Africans are doing is staying out of this debate. And so I didn't see, I have to, for the record, state that I didn't see any anger towards white South Africans, except some allegations that white South Africans employ foreigners because they can exploit them. I'm not sure whether I agree with that 100%, because I think most white South Africans who employ foreigners in South Africa don't know that they're employing a foreigner the day that they employ them. They find out later on. We're a little bit naive when it comes to that. And I'm not sure that white South Africans are underpaying immigrants to this country. I'm not sure, maybe I'm wrong, that there's this mass exploitation taking place. Marie Openshaw says, where has humanitarianism gone? Out the window today, that's for sure. There were people from various human rights bodies making a case for human rights, and that was just thrown out the window very, very quickly. There were people who pointed towards our constitution that on the surface it seems guarantees healthcare to anyone inside the country. It seems that it may only apply to emergency healthcare. But there were people quoting the Constitution saying that those are limited rights when it comes to foreigners in South Africa, and also people, lawyers in the audience, saying that South Africans have the right under law to effect a citizen's arrest. So, you know, if you find someone illegal in your country, you have the right to arrest them, so to speak. So there was not much love in the room today. Let me put it that way. Margaret Guider says, thanks for trying, Tom. You gave it your best and have courage. We appreciate it. I don't like to go into a room and be the unpopular guy. And although I got people to agree with me on 2 or 3 points, when I said, can't we leave the children out of this, there was a resounding no from everyone in the room. Remember, as in South Africa, foreigners also were there due to politicians. I feel, yeah, well, I try to make that point as well, that the fact that we've got this problem is because we've mismanaged our relationships with our SADC neighbors. We haven't put enough pressure on our neighboring countries to sort their act out, and we've just allowed things to happen. We allowed our borders to be porous. These people who came to this country never climbed over high fences. They just walked across the border because we don't have borders in South Africa. I agree with Julius. In fact, as I sat thinking about all these issues today, the one politician that I found myself agreeing with more and more is Julius Malema, who has his finger on the pulse of this kind of stuff. I never thought I would agree with so much that Julius says. Cecilia Easthorpe says, hi Tom, we are South African taxpayers. Why must we pay for foreigners? It's not fair. I see every day how our pensioners suffer to get medical care. Cecilia, yes, and that is something, I mean, that's one of the arguments that was brought up, was people are tired of seeing their 70 and 80-year-old grannies getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning to sit in a queue to be told to come back in 3 months' time. And there were allegations that foreigners jump queues, bribe officials in the hospitals, and it's the South African old people that that pay the price. You know, if these things were as simple as waving a magic wand and making a problem disappear, and we could just wave a magic wand and the foreigners go, I suspect what you'll find is you'll find shorter queues, but I don't think you'll find a massive increase in healthcare standards. Our system is broken. There's a lot of talk about our system being under-resourced. But we spend more per capita on GDP on healthcare than I think any other country in the world. There's no reason why it should be in such a mess. The medical care that you're not getting in the hospitals is largely because of mismanagement and stealing. And that sits on the South African stoep, I'm afraid. Mick Deirdricks, how does anyone deny another one medical attention, especially children and old people? There was a young doctor there who, I think he was trying to explain the Hippocratic Oath, that doctors, when they take that oath, actually can never refuse anyone healthcare. Just being a doctor means that you have to, when you take that oath, you have to help people around you. And while I understood, and even go as far as saying, all right, if you want to deny foreigners access to healthcare, fine. But can we leave the kids out? The kids, just the kids. Can we leave the kids out? No. So there we go. You know, personally, and I've been in this situation, and if I was in this situation again, I can say with my hand on my heart that if I was in a queue and there was a 6-year-old kid next to me that needed medical attention, I would move one seat over to the right and put the kid ahead in the queue, South African or foreigner, because I don't think any child deserves to pay the price for adult problems. But that's not, it's not the prevailing attitude. Anita Jane Sinclair says, we have one of the best hospitals in Kempton Park. It has been deserted for so many years, will cost millions to bring it back. It's becoming derelict. Any go fund a major corporate bodies who have it in them to assist. Yeah, well, you and I can try and fix it, but we're outside of the system and we'll be shut down very quickly if we tried something like that. Haley Klopper says, hi Tom, but who allowed these foreigners into our country? The same people who allowed our healthcare system to collapse. The same people who allowed our safety and security in this country to deteriorate. The same people who have bank accounts in Dubai. Janet Sneed says, amazing. I didn't feel too amazing today. I felt like I was the odd man out. Ronald Gerard says, to not have children have healthcare is evil. Laura MacDonald, hi Tom, really, really sad. No healthcare should be denied to anyone, especially little children, no matter which country they're from. Not the prevailing attitude. Margaret Guider, most politicians are not very nice people. I think that most politicians just live in a bubble. Una Guider, I quite honestly feel there's nobody left to vote for. Each one is disappointed. But when I was having this discussion with Tonya, every now and then we go, there's a political leader we can put our, give our vote to. And then they say something totally left field and go, okay, well, we can't support them. And I'm with you right now, Una. There's not one South African politician that I can go stand in a queue for right now. Not one. And before my DA friends tell me that the DA are the answer, the DA have delivered us this government we've got right now. Somebody said to me today, Tom, the opposition is 60% in this country. How is the old guard still running it? Well, I think that's a question you need to ask the DA. I will say that we as a country are run by the mafia big time. We're rotten to the core. Una says this is also a huge problem with our firefighting capacity. The municipality moans about private firefighting companies. However, the municipal fire departments barely have any resources. When my friend died in a house fire, the fire department got there after the fire went out on its own. And so they weren't available to put that fire out. But I guess that's the foreigner's fault as well. Sheldon De Beer says, how's it, Tom? Sandy Wells says, hi, Tom. My take is that there is another plan at play by the South African government. Government doesn't care. Government wants this chaos, so it makes it easier for Iran, China, Russia to come in and take over. That's why government has done nothing to fix the USA tariffs imposed. This government is paving the way for what is owed to these communist countries that have bailed the ANC out with millions. I don't even know if it's that complicated. I'm not saying that these things don't exist, but I think it's as simple as politicians not living in the real world, not living in our world. I say to my friends, if you and I decided to start a political party tomorrow and we found the couple of $100,000 that it takes to register for the next elections, general elections, we would need about 100,000 votes at the current numbers to get 2 seats in Parliament. Well, happy days. We don't need to be a majority party. You take a seat in Parliament, I take a seat in Parliament, we each get that 800 or million rand salary. We both get houses in Cape Town, we both get air tickets, and we get access to political power where if we are corrupt, we can make a whole lot of money. So we don't even have to run the country. We can be a 2% party and still make millions every year. The IEC will pay us. The IEC will put money in our bank account every year. Millions, even for a small party. People wonder why these 2% parties stay at it. Because there's a job for a couple of people, because there's millions going into the political party's bank accounts every year. So you can go into politics not to change anything, simply to have a seat and enrich yourself. Joni Kennedy says, I feel so scared for these people. What difference does it make? They're here, and if they need help medically, it's cruel not to help. Tom, have a mug of hot chocolate. Will do the trick. I don't know. I got a bottle of brandy as a gift this morning. I might sink half a bottle and just pass out. I don't do that, but I'm tempted. The best people are often not the leaders, as they're voted sometimes by being popular. There are so many educated people with good character who could make better leaders. Look at the USA. Where are the young, educated people? Margaret Guider, please don't knock yourself too hard. It took a hell of a lot of guts to do what you did today. I knew sitting there that I wasn't going to be the most popular person in the room. But I did want to try and leave, planting 1 or 2 seeds. Maybe I did. Alistair Jameson, what borders? Exactly. We haven't had borders in this country for decades now. Thank you, Linda. Long message here. I can't put it up on screen, but I will. Your last line is sending love and pray that one day we will have a beautiful functioning country that we can be proud of. That's my wish too. Isabel LaRue, hi Tom, I love you. Feeling sorry for all our people that can't afford medical aid, but please make sure that they take me out feet first before taking me to any government hospital. We can't complain about services anywhere in South Africa because there are none. Grant Paulin says, what bugs me is that criminals get preferential treatment in hospitals. Others wait the whole day to see the doctor. Now, you see, we don't have anyone saying the criminals must go to the back of the queue. In any of these arguments, I saw criminals at Helen Joseph. They get their own room. They've got guards outside. And you think, hey, these guys got brought straight in, express delivery. And so a criminal probably gets faster access to healthcare in South Africa than a South African citizen and a foreigner. They're in the front of the queue. And our politicians don't even need to go to our government hospitals because they've got medical aid. Margaret Guider said, Krida Mutwa predicted what has happened in this country. I know, and I knew Krida Mutwa, and I interviewed him, and I spent a lot of time chatting to Krida Mutwa. And sadly, a lot of his predictions are coming true. Cindy Hillebrand says, hi, Tom, how are you? Please, can you give me your email address? I'd like to reach out to you. Very lady. Yes, yeah, I'll give you my email address. It's tomlondon369@gmail.com. But I can't guarantee that I can help, and I actually can't guarantee that I can get to the story, because between the start of this broadcast and now, if I go to my messenger, there have been 4 appeals for help in the last 33 minutes. I don't know if people understand how desperate the situation is, and that Tom London helping one starfish at a time is good for that starfish, but it's not a solution to our healthcare problems. Unfortunately, I hate to say this, Cindy, but I may not even see that email, as it's surrounded by 100 other emails. Same story. I made a decision when I realized that I couldn't help everyone, that I would try and help young people. And maybe that's unfair. But in my mind, I thought if I can help young people, they've still got a whole long road ahead of them. And us oldies, well, we've had a bit of life. I know it sounds horrible. And it's all just one simple guy trying to find a solution to the problem I have, which is the overwhelming number of requests that I get on a daily basis. Margaret says, my problem is where to from here? We seem to be at a standstill. We need political leadership. That we need someone in this country that can get 60% of the country to agree with them on issues. Right now, we don't have that. Beverly Morgan says, not true. Your facts are totally incorrect. South Africa is not even on the list of countries that spend the most per capita on healthcare. USA is on top of the list. South Africa is around number 50. All right. Well, I stand to correction, Beverly, and I don't have my internet open to rebut. But I heard that being said in the room today. And certainly when it comes to education, I've heard that. But if my facts are totally incorrect, then I will step back from that argument and say, you are correct. However, I'll say this in my defense. If you gave me, Helen Joseph Hospital to run, if you made me CEO of that hospital, I would fix it. It would mean firing a whole lot of people. It would mean charging a whole lot of people. And it would mean I'd need bodyguards and I'd need people to surround me that I don't get taken out. But if I had that, I think I could fix it. 66 billion rand put into our healthcare system in Gauteng every year. And the irregular expenditure is billions. Forget mismanagement and efficiency. Just irregular expenditure alone does us in. Cecilia says, hi Tom, come to Cape Town, visit Boertse Clinic. The service that our old age people are getting is absolutely disgusting. It's shocking. They sit all day and they close the doors and say, come back tomorrow. Yeah. Hey, the foreigners are to blame. John Steinhazen has become a joke, says Haley. He no longer stands up for the people in this country. Look, I don't know. I'm not really a big John Steinhazen fan, and I was turned off John Steinhazen when he did the Mac G podcast, and Mac G threw quick fire words at him. One was roadkill, and John Steinhazen said my ex-wife. And I found that incredibly distasteful. I don't know whether he's ever apologized for that, and if he did apologize for that, perhaps I'd give him a chance. But while a South African male describes his ex-wife as roadkill, I'm sorry, he hasn't got my support. Why don't these foreigners stay in their countries? Oh, it's a good question. Very good question. Some of them from the Central African countries are escaping war. Some, like our Zimbabwean neighbors, have a country where the economy is collapsed and there's no way to make money, so they come here. You know, I don't know why it's a surprise that people come to South Africa. People have been drawn to South Africa for hundreds of years. Jan van Riebeck was drawn to South Africa. White people were drawn to South Africa. European immigrants were drawn to South Africa. People from all over Africa have been drawn to South Africa for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. South Africa, I think, is always going to draw people. How you manage that is another story altogether. My brother, who I consider to be very wise when we have these conversations, says South Africa should prepare for a population of around 100 million in 20 years. And I was with researchers today who said that they've got research that backs that up, that looks like where our population is going. So, you know, maybe we can shut the doors and just keep this place for us alone. But maybe we need to start looking at how a country with 100 million people in it functions. I don't say I'm right about everything. But Mara Nicole, I think that... And I have to just put my own story in here. In 1986, my dad, who had served in the border war in Angola. He didn't want his boys to fight in a war. He had a thing in his head that his 3 boys were not going to fight in a war. And so we all got on a plane and we went off to America, where we tried to make it work, where he tried to get a job, where we tried to get legal status. And it was impossible, so we returned home. But people get on aeroplanes and buses and taxis and walk across rivers because they're escaping something, that they don't want to be part of something, or they can't survive in that environment, or they're going to get killed in that environment. So yeah, perhaps it is uninhabitable for many people, but I don't know. Cindy Hillebrand says, our country has fallen apart, government doesn't care, everything is based on race and rights, but they turn their head away from those who know how to do the right thing correctly. Have a drink. That's the best advice. Children should not be allowed to suffer. That makes me sad too. A lot of comments about politicians not living in our world, and I endorse what some politicians have said and activists, that all our politicians should use government health care. Sadly, our kids leave this country to find new homes, jobs, and be safe. See? You know, we ask why the Zimbabweans come to South Africa, but why do South Africans leave and go to Dubai? Why do South Africans leave and go to Europe? Why do South Africans leave and go to Australia? Why do South Africans leave? South Africans leave this country to get into another country and have a better life. And perhaps most South Africans leave legally, but there are South Africans, and I know personally of South Africans who have gone in illegally, like our foreign nationals that have entered this country and then applied for legal status. There are South Africans in Australia who are claiming to be refugees. See, it's not just Zimbabweans. South Africans leave this country too because they find it uninhabitable or unable to prosper. Maybe should be picketing on the steps of the union buildings. Tom, no man is an island. You can't help everyone. No, I don't think I can. I don't think I can. Hi, Tom. I want to know what happened to the Cuban doctors that came in during COVID. I don't know. Today already got you, Tom. Makes me sad. You need a good sleep. I'll protect you, says Ghost in Wires. Thank you. Tom, I understand you're feeling very bad right now. I don't want this to be a pity party about Tom. I'll get up tomorrow and I'll bounce back from it, but I'm very worried. Very worried. South Africa's got so many different problems, not just the healthcare problem, not just the immigration problem. But I think our next election will be fought on those 2 issues. Keep the foreigners out, says Anita. Too late for that. We let these borders be open for 30 years, and now what? The solution, according to many of the Operation Dudula and March on March members, is to send people back to their countries. Truthfully, the world's a mess, says Dawn. It's doing my head in. Every day is worse than the day before. Viv, calling you in. Our buddy needs you to make him realize he's special. No, Viv will just make me feel ordinary. Good evening, Tom. Yes, I agree. You're looking tired. Oh, well, at least we got consensus on that. South Africans leave because of job opportunities and BEE nonsense. One of the people in the audience said they'd like Donald Trump needs to... What would sort South Africa out is if Donald Trump came to this country and ran it for 1 month. He would send all the foreigners home and he would fix everything. And I wanted to jump up and say, yes, and he would get rid of BEE laws and he would place the economic power in this country squarely in the hands of white people. So why would you want him here? But anyway, I didn't say that. Many South Africans left the country in the late 80s, mainly whites, never to be seen again. Yeah, South Africans have fled this country too. My experience of Cape Town Hospital has been positive, and for friends too, don't understand why you don't like the DA, says Moira. It's not that I don't like the DA. I know some people in the DA, and Helen Ziller, by the way, believes that foreign nationals should all be documented, and I agree with her. I don't agree. I've got to be very careful how I say this, but I'm not sure the opposition's participation in the government of national unity is going to bear fruit. That's my problem with it. All my kids left. I'm alone here in South Africa. I know much about the Cuban doctors. Too bad, too sad. Taxpayers' money wasted. And there we go. All right. So, listen, I just wanted to tell you, because we didn't have a show today, that this is what I've been doing. This is what happened. You'll be able to watch it on ENCA on Sunday night and see the whole discussion and make up your own mind. And perhaps you agree with Operation Dudula and March on March and PA and Action SA. Perhaps you agree. And I think we need room for disagreement and debate in this country. And I don't have a problem debating. And I actually don't have a problem being wrong. What I have a problem with is hatred and anger dominating every discussion. Because I don't think we can fix things. I mean, yeah, sometimes anger is a good thing. But once the anger subsides, you still need to fix the problem with logic. And I'm not sure how much of that prevails at the moment. Anyway, so yeah, I mean, I suppose this is me venting, and if I've transferred my negativity onto you, I apologize. But I did feel quite sad when I said, can we leave the children out? And everyone shouted no. I thought, come on, man. Come on, man. The kids shouldn't have to suffer. But wasn't the prevailing attitude. So that's where it stands. And I maintain, and I say this again, and I've said it a few times, that I have a fear that our next election will not be fought on the multitude of issues we have in this country, but our election will be simplified into one big screaming fest, like we've seen in Western countries around the world. Our problems were caused by someone else. And I'm waiting for the day that South Africans, that we look in the mirror and we go, our problems have been caused by us. We are our greatest enemy, ourselves. The fact that we've allowed all of these situations to exist, including the immigration problem, is our fault. Anyway, yeah, Una, I just battle to hate anybody based on their race or their ethnicity or religion. That's why on the Tom London show you'll find a Christian, a Muslim, an atheist, and room for everybody at the table. I don't want to go down that road that I see too often in media and in the world, where only if you agree with me are you allowed to sit at the table. So, I mean, it's nice that people feel sorry for me, and many people agree with what I'm saying, but people who are on this channel right now who don't agree with me, and some have expressed that, that's fine. That's fine. There's room for this. There's room for everyone, and there's room for all the points of view. But where I switch off, and I make no apologies for this, where I switch off in an argument is when you move away from logic and facts and you run on emotions alone. And the irony here is that the people who are shouting foreigners must go, with a lot of emotion in their voices, including people in the audience pointing out a foreigner and saying, look at your big belly. Some lady next to me said, you've been here 20 years, look how you've got a big belly. How do you even get an erection? Someone said this one and pointed to, I thought, but that's when I switch off. That's when I switch off, when you point fingers at someone and say this one. And when you point fingers at someone and say your fat belly, and the person who's pointing the finger's got a fatter belly, then I go, we've lost the plot here, and that's when I disengage. The moment I see the hatred and the anger overrun the logic, that's when I take 2 steps away from an argument. So yeah, I think all of these issues are valid. I think our immigration problems we've got in this country, our porous borders, our undocumented foreigners, healthcare, I think all of these are valid arguments that need lots of ventilation and discussion. But I'm just one guy who can't sit in a room with what I feel is hatred or extreme anger bordering on hatred and join the crowd. I can't do that. So there we go. I mean, you're going to love me for that or hate me for that. But that's me, and that's part of me that I can't change. Anyway, this morning was good because I was with my friend Craig, and I was with about 40 people from the insurance industry, and we were discussing the power of the smartphone and online media. And so I had a lovely morning, and I had a very interesting afternoon, I can say. And that was my day. So yeah, we missed out on the Tom London show today, but we'll bring it back on Tuesday, 3 p.m., where we'll carry on with our normal frivolity and happiness and kindness. I think that's why I am in the mood I'm in tonight, because I have spent 52 years on this planet and living in South Africa, always believing in the kindness of South Africans, and I see it on a day-to-day basis, and I've been touched by it. And I just hope that as we navigate these very difficult waters, we don't lose our sense of humanity, and we don't forget that kindness goes a long way. The interesting thing was at the end of the discussion, we all got put into a entertainment room where there was food and drinks, and then everyone sat down at tables and ate food together. So it totally blew my mind. But anyway, yeah. Accountability. Accountability. There's a lack of it in this world and in our country. So I do hope and I do pray that a leader will step forward. Come what cometh the hour, cometh the man. I hope that a leader steps up one of these days in South Africa with honest intentions, who doesn't want to plunder and steal and remove themselves from society and create an elite bubble for themselves. And by the way, this is also the problem I've got with opposition politicians, is that as soon as an opposition politician is in government, they get access to all of the trappings. So I would be more impressed with the DA if the ministers in cabinet said we don't need the blue lights, we don't need the bodyguards, and we can drive a Suzuki. That's when an opposition politician will get my support. But our opposition politicians don't do that. They get the ministerial post, they get all the perks, and then they get fat. Like physically, you watch them putting on weight. Anyway, Brenda Hall says, we really need our God to intervene in our country. Well, it's interesting. I mean, God didn't enter that. Nobody spoke about God or religion at all in that room today. And I was tempted to, because 80% of South Africans identify as Christian, and I just wanted to throw that line in there. And, treat others as you'd like to be treated. And if we run off that, then we know what the right thing to do is. But I'm not sure how much space there is for religion in political discussions in South Africa. I wish there was more. And I am. I've said it before, and some people don't like this about me. Some of my friends and people close to me think I've lost the plot. But I am unashamedly a person of faith, and I'm guided by the teachings and principles of Jesus Christ. My Muslim friends are guided by the teachings and principles of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. My friends from monotheistic faiths are generally guided by the teachings and the principles in that faith, and they're pretty similar in that we're here to be kind to each other. And I think we could do a better job. And perhaps, yes, if we turn to God rather than the almighty rand, we'd get more things done. Christian Skipper says, "Hi Tom, how are you doing health-wise?" I'm happy to report, I've asked this question a few times today, that I'm health-wise, I'm fit as a fiddle, man. I really don't have much to complain about. And so health-wise, I'm okay. I'm doing very well health-wise, and nothing going on with me that would send me to the doctor. So I'm very grateful for that. Henrietta Cortez, our Danish friend, says, "Hello and sorry for my late participation." And perhaps countries like Denmark and the Scandinavian countries are good examples of... I single out Denmark because I've got Danish blood and I know a little bit about the culture because I grew up in it. It's a very bad thing in Danish culture to show off. I think Henriette will bear me out on this. I remember when I was doing well in business and I bought myself a fancy car and I went to show my grandparents. That didn't impress them. And so if you're Danish, one of the things that you have in your DNA is don't try and put yourself above others, and don't try and jump the queue and push in front of others. It's just something that seems to be ingrained in the culture, and it's something that I think we could use a dose of in the world. So true, Tom. Have faith in the Lord above. I just think if you've got a country that's got 80-odd% of people who say, I'm a Christian, then it shouldn't be too hard to get 80-odd% of the country to behave like Christians. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I've got the whole thing on Christianity completely wrong. But in my simple Springs mind, it starts with loving your neighbor. It starts with removing the log out of your own eye instead of focusing on the speck in someone else's, and it focuses on do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And I just think if we just use those principles, even if you don't believe it in God or religion or Jesus, surely you can believe in those things. And if those things guided us, I think we'd do better. And it was Jesus himself who turned over the tables of the tax collectors. He stood up to corruption. So just because you're a Christian or you have faith doesn't mean you can't fight corruption or theft or incompetence. You can. But don't lose yourself along the way. Tracy Corson says, I love the Danish culture, the hygge. Yeah, hygge is an interesting thing because... I experienced it every year growing up, not knowing about this thing called hygge. I learned about hygge about 10 years ago, reading up on Danish culture. But, when you're part of a Danish family, which was my mom's side of the family, no one says, we're going into hygge now. What happens is winter comes, the curtains get drawn, the candles come out, the fire gets lit, the place is cozy, everyone sits around in the lounge and talks and shares stories, and it's a very warm, insular experience. And the Danes are very good at that. And so every winter in Springs, I'd watch my grandparents, they would metamorphosize. Is that a word? And all of a sudden, everything got drawn into this little space where we would be a family. And it's very hard to describe what hygge is. But if you have been exposed to Danish hygge, you will be able to spot it instantly. And that was always a highlight of the year for me growing up with Scandinavian grandparents who left their country, Denmark, in 1950 to look for a better life in South Africa, ironically. The Good Samaritan was a foreigner, says Moira LaRue. Deirdre Curry says, I don't know what to say to you, Tom. Keep on going. Well, I do believe that at our core as human beings in South Africa, we are good. We just get distracted. Austrian culture also teaches you to be humble. Believe it or not, we're actually very hospitable people. Yeah. The thing in South Africa now is if you manage to score a good deal and you make $100 million, the first thing you do is buy a Ferrari and race it up and down Rivonia Road or Umhlanga. Or if you make a whole lot of money, you buy a 50 million rand house in Cape Town and then you race your Ferrari up and down Camps Bay Drive. And you show everyone around you how successful you are and how much you've got. And we celebrate that. Let's be honest. We celebrate that as a country and we look up to that. And we all want to have the Ferrari and the jet. At any cost, it seems. I keep thinking of Viv that says, well, we're not all going to be like that, so get used to being average. Maybe it would be nice if we could all get used to not being billionaires and millionaires and hold on to our humanity. Margaret says the Scandinavian people are very special in different ways. Well, they got some things right, hey. Healthcare is one of them. Henriette Cortez says, I cannot be a proper Dane because I never quite understood Janteloven. Yes, let's not brag ever. But when it gets to the term, don't ever think that you are anything, translated from Jantelov, the funny thing is that I actually thought it was a written law. It took me many years to find out, yeah, it's so ingrained in the culture. Do not think you are better than anyone else. And that's something that if I could wave a magic wand in this country and get rid of is exactly that. That your big business or your tender or whatever it is that's put you in that privileged position has put you in a really lucky space. But it hasn't made you any better than the next man. Una says, a lot of South Africans are way too obsessed with money and status. I think most of us are obsessed with money and status. Tracy Corson says, Warren Buffett teaches wonderful money lessons. Live below your means and never, ever be flashy. We got a long way to go. We got a long, long way to go. Just go hang out at Lanseria Airport on a Sunday afternoon and watch the private jets of the people who are benefiting from South Africa's riches fly in from their game farms and their islands and whatever else. Margaret says, can't stand any form of showing off. It usually belongs to some shady characters. Amen. Okay, so that's that. That's my whole So I don't know. I just go like, here I am, and I've got it out of my system, and I'm not sure that I said it and what I've said necessarily for you to agree with me, but I just needed to get it out of my system because I did come back from this discussion today thinking surely we're more humane than what I was part of today. But watch it on Sunday night. I'm really keen, if you've got access to ENCA, I'm really keen for you to watch this program on Sunday night. It's called We the Nation. And I'd love to get your feedback on the Tuesday show and you tell me what you think. Because maybe I read the room wrong. Maybe I got it all wrong. And maybe the rest of the people in that room were right and I was wrong. I don't know. And so the only way to know is you watch that program on Sunday and then you come back and tell me what you think. Annette says, may I just as closure remind you of all you've achieved since your first post on Facebook. You showed Jesus to people. You're an awesome person, Tom London. I've said this before. I've always kept religion out of my shows because we are diverse and everyone's got you're from that religion, you're that religion, I'm this religion. So I've tended not to talk about religion. I've tended not to push Christianity through this microphone because I don't want to alienate other faiths. I'd like to have people from all faiths join us on these shows. But I am a Christian, and my life truly hit a turning point when I was sitting on my bed just 5 meters away from me here at 12 o'clock in the morning, unable to breathe. And looking back, I realize now that I was dying. And I had a near-death experience. I never, ever thought I would be someone that would talk about a near-death experience. I've watched these programs, I've listened to people in interviews, and I've always thought it sounds a bit wacky. But when it happens to you, what do? I've had two choices in my life on this issue. I could say nothing, and then nobody will ever know about the experience I had, and I'll never be criticized. Or And this is where I find myself, in a space where it's impossible for me to deny. It's impossible for me to deny what I experienced that night on the 25th of August, 2024. I saw my late mom at the end of my bed, and I saw my late friends and family late, standing at the end of my bed saying, "Come, it's lovely here." Those were the words they used. And I did what every NDE survivor, if you want to call us that, did. I said, "No, my job's not finished. I've still got stuff to do here." I've heard thousands of people say this. I never thought I would be the person to say that. Never thought I would ever utter those words. And no sooner had I said, "I can't come, I've still got stuff to do," no sooner had I said that I felt, and when I looked, saw Jesus sitting next to me on the bed. Please understand, my friends who've known me for 52 years and my family who know me well would never have predicted Tom standing up and saying that. No one who knows me would ever have said that's something that will come out of Tom London's mouth. In fact, most people would have said crazy. Never would Tom ever say something like that. But I cannot deny what I felt, what I saw. Whether you believe it or not, whether it was true or not, that's another debate. But what I saw is what I experienced and saw. And I saw Jesus Christ sitting next to me. And he asked me one question, and that was, "Do you have faith in me, Thomas?" And I said, "Yes." And then he said, "I'm going to take you on a journey. Don't question one step." I'll never forget that. And so, yeah, people can call me a Jesus freak or Tom's lost the plot. Perhaps I've got family and friends who are massively disappointed in me. I don't know. But that's what I experienced. That's what I saw. That's what I felt. And for me to deny that when it was so clear would really trouble me. And so I have had to, because the river flowed in that direction, go with the current. And I could keep quiet about it and save myself a whole lot of drama. But that's what I felt. That's what I saw. And increasingly in my life, I am guided by those principles. Friends who come and visit me see that there's a Holy Bible on my coffee table, and some of them go, "What the heck, Tom?" And I go, "Yeah, it's here." And the reason I keep it in front of me on all of my broadcasts and all of the work I do is not to push the word of Christianity on people. But when I look over at this book, I get a very strong message back to say, try and be a decent person, Tom. And I think that's what I'm trying to do. So, yeah, it's an interesting world we live in. And we've all got different opinions, and some of us agree on that and some of us disagree on it. But I just wish we could all agree on being humane, and that would be enough for me. So, yeah, that's my story. I have said it a few times and mentioned it, but perhaps it needed to be expressed very clearly, which I hope I've done tonight. And I hope that as I express my faith, it doesn't put you off me. Because as much as I have faith, I'm also a human being. I'm a sinner, not a saint. And I have weaknesses, and I am not perfect. So please don't think you're sitting with a perfect person here. Please don't think that you're sitting with someone who can lecture you. I can't. But I can't deny what happened to me. And that's what happened to me. Never thought I would be one of those people. Those experiences change you, says Karen. Was having a procedure after my mum passed, and she also came to me with how to go on. Yeah. And I think when you talk about these things, you find more and more people say, well, I haven't wanted to tell people, but I had this experience once. And so perhaps it's more common than we think. Okay, so wow, we went from foreigners and healthcare to God in 1 hour and 9 minutes. And I said I would only talk for 20 minutes or so, but here we are, we've done an hour. I'm looking for one more comment, the last comment. I'm going to look for a comment that really works. Stephen Taylor, thank you. Oh, Stephen says he had the same thing, that Jesus never spoke to him but sat on his bed, and since then he's watched over me. Yeah. We're all made in his image. I believe you 100%. And the thing that I really love about the community that we've got around this little channel called Tom London is I'm really proud that you don't have to agree with me to be my friend. You don't have to have the same faith as me to be my friend. You don't have to do anything to be my friend or to sit around this table. The only thing I ask is that we're decent to each other. That's all. That's not even a religious thing. Just let's be decent to each other. And then we will watch miracles happen. Because out of kindness, no bad can come out of kindness. Okay, I think that's it. Thank you for hitting the like button. Thanks for hitting the heart button. I'm not going to use reverse psychology or tell you that I'm not your friend if you won't press the button. But thank you for pressing the buttons. And thanks for listening to me. Sometimes I think, oh my goodness, I should have stopped half an hour ago. People surely get tired of me droning on. So thank you. That's all I can say. Thank you for being, you're my partner in all of this. And the only thing I hope for out of these shows and everything we do is that some good comes from it. And so far, so good. A lot of goods come from our efforts on the show, and we'll continue trying to change lives and help people as we go along. I can't do it without you. I can't do any of this without you. We can't fix Gina Lee, Janse van Veerens of the world, or Jason Kennedy's, or anybody that we have or need to help. I can't do it alone. I've just got a loud mouth, but I certainly need your energy and your support and our kinship that we can develop here to try and transform people's lives one by one. Barbara Allen, thank you. And Desiree Bouillon? Very interesting names, lovely names. Thank you for sharing your experience. Stay blessed. Yeah, thank you. So, yeah, that's it for tonight. I'll be back with you on Tuesday for a full show with Alistair and Tonya. I probably pop up late at night, sometime between now and Tuesday, and have a discussion about something unrelated to politics. Politics, eh? Yes, like dirty business. Okay, have a lekker night. I hope you're warm wherever you are. It's bitterly cold outside in Johannesburg. And I'm blessed to have a full gas bottle. So I'm going to pretend I'm a millionaire for half an hour and burn all 3 bars on my gas heater and warm my room up. And thank the Lord that I am not a foreigner living in South Africa today. Bless you. Have a lovely night. And once again, thank you for being part of my journey and for being part of my life. I really, really do appreciate you. I don't know if I tell you enough. But there isn't a day that goes by that I don't walk around this little cottage I live in and not thank God for you being on the other side of this